Welcome to Lived In, a podcast series by Hemby Home Co. Lived In is all about interior styling for the ordinary home. If you live in an ordinary house on an average street and you love design, this podcast is for you. Many of us long to infuse the places in which we dwell with both style and livability, but we also have to stick to realistic budgets. What does it look like to live in a space that transitions with you as life does? How do you build equity while creating a space that truly feels like home? And what can you do to make a space yours when it doesn't belong to you? Join me, Hemby Co, a realtor, content manager, and interior advisor, and let's find out. Hello, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2. Today, we are talking about unsellable houses. I am very excited about this episode because while I've really enjoyed some of the discussion of the last episode about design, I think that the content of this one is going to be really helpful for those of you who own your homes and are thinking of selling, but are maybe scared to do so. I subscribe to House Beautiful magazine, and I follow them on Instagram as well. And they've recently released an article on their website with the title, "Has Resale Value Ruined Interior Design?" And I'll link to that article in the show notes. But the premise of the article is that a concern about resale has essentially resulted in all of us in the general public all doing the same things to our homes. We all live in boring, white, characterless boxes, and we should not let resale value dictate how we decorate, etc., etc. And I agree, kind of. Nothing is less inspiring to me than a new build home with no character or personality. But I think at the level at which I live, and at the level of which the vast majority of us live, we have to at least let resale inform how we decorate. Now, I've seen it taken the complete opposite way, where someone threw complete caution to the wind, and the house sat and sat and sat on the market for sale. But there were other factors at play beyond the finishes that the sellers had chosen. The house didn't get a lot of light. It was on a decently busy street. It was priced too high. Some of the finishes were dated and too old world traditional in terms of the feel. So there were additional factors that were off-putting for buyers beyond the decor. And I pretty much consistently tell my buyer clients to look beyond design choices. Look at the structure of the home and the things that have to withstand living. Was the roof installed correctly? Are the windows old? Do the doors shut all the way? Look past the colour of the carpet and the colour of the walls and the doorknobs. Flooring is tricky, and I recognize that because it can get expensive very quickly. But you can also distract from flooring. It's harder to do that with walls. So I actually have a co-worker who shared pictures of her house when she bought it with us in our last team meeting, and it was green everywhere. Like felt carpet that was all green and then green walls. It literally looked like somebody Irish had vomited all over the inside of it. Thankfully, she and her husband were able to look past that at the things that they needed to worry about versus the things that they didn't. So the things that they needed to worry about were things like layout and structure and location. And then they were able to make the changes that they needed to the aesthetics so that they were less jarring. I think that the average person can actually appreciate good design. So I don't think design needs to be pulled back and watered down and restrained in order to cater to what you think other people like when it comes to selling your home. If you have strong choices that are not considered through a design lens and are pretty contrary to what, in quote, most people like, and I'm really putting most people in air quotes here, then when it comes to selling, maybe you could paint then, but really, even then, a discerning buyer or a discerning buyer's agent is going to say, don't worry about the paint. Where I do think it gets hairy And where it might need to be restrained would be when you are making more costly or less cost-effective design choices. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of things that my husband and I have thought about doing in our home, but then said, well, we're not going to be here forever. We won't recoup that cost and it won't be appreciated in the same way here. And so that's a bit different than if you're in a position where you just have funds set aside to make a space your own and you're not concerned about whether that investment in the space is going to be recouped when you sell the home. Because in that case, I'd say go all out. Do whatever it is you want to do design-wise, regardless of what it costs, because it's just for enjoyment and you're not worrying about the return. I think that that's what the editors of the article would want everyone to do, to kind of just go all out. But I don't think that that's really a reality for the vast majority of Middle America, which is being squeezed financially, by the way. Anyway, rant over. Let's check out my thing of the week, and then we'll get to the point of today's episode, which conveniently is all about selling houses. All right, my thing of the week. I am currently obsessing over our bathroom, our downstairs bathroom, and not in a good way. Those of you who have been listening to this for a while will know, but we did a modest makeover of that bathroom. In fact, we're still in the midst of our modest makeover because we are missing a light that my husband accidentally threw away. Yes. And also because we tried something that visually is beautiful, but practically is just not right for our family, which is to do 2 curtains on either side of the tub versus just having a screen. We are going to get a screen now, and I cannot wait. But anyway, I keep looking at the bathroom, and I know that it's not finished, but I also know that it needs something. So the fixtures that we chose are very simple and very pared back and minimal. And I don't want it to feel cold in there. And I've wanted to do beadboard, but because of the timing of when we did that bathroom, we didn't really have the time to wait to install a new wall finish before installing the new toilet. And now that the new toilet is in, there just is not enough room to squeeze the beadboard paneling behind it, which is a huge bummer. So I've been looking at wall treatments that can be installed retroactively with very little expertise, and I think, famous last words, that I've landed on painting the walls to look like they are wallpapered. So if you're listening to this on the website, you'll see images with examples of what I'm talking about. But essentially, we could tape off the wall and then paint it to make it look like wallpaper. And I like this instead of actually installing wallpaper because it doesn't require the same level of skill as installing wallpaper. And all I would really need is some blue tape and a paintbrush and some paint. If we do it, I'll let you know, and of course post some pictures up on the blog as well. But for now, my thing of the week is painting walls to look like they're wallpapered. All right, let's get back to the episode. Okay, so why don't homes sell? Why is it that sometimes one house will sell, but then the one next door will sit for weeks, months, maybe even a year or 2 without selling? There are a few different reasons, and essentially, I would boil them down to poor price positioning for market circumstances, condition and design of the property, and location challenges. So let's talk about the first one, price positioning for market circumstances. I can talk about this because I experienced this with one of my own listings. Pricing depends on literally everything. When the list price, so the price that the house is going to be listed for sale at, when the list price is being chosen, it has to be chosen with awareness of, number 1, what the market is doing, number 2, other similar listings, and number 3, the condition of the home. Now, if it's a seller's market, so that's when demand is way higher than supply, then it makes sense to maximize what you can get in terms of resale. You are way more likely looking at bidding wars and desperate buyers than anything else. And so you have to consider that versus if it is a buyer's market, which is where buyers can essentially pick and choose because there's so much available. And in that kind of a market, you need to price the home in such a way that you get the most that you can, but don't risk alienating potential buyers. You want them to come and see your house over your neighbor's house, for example. It's not just supply and demand, though, when we talk about market circumstances. It's also interest rates. So one of the reasons that 2023 was so tough in the housing market was because even though it was technically a seller's market, the demand was lower than it ordinarily is in a seller's market because interest rates were so high that people were put off and didn't want to buy. So in that kind of a market, buyers are either going to wait, which a lot of people did, or they're going to go with a residential home builder who is offering incentives to help them save on interest rates or closing costs. So if your house is not a new build that you're trying to sell, then your pricing has to account for that. Additionally, if a house price is too low, people are going to be skeptical about the house. And you also risk people lowballing you even further because they think that you're an idiot. If it's too high, people are either going to really lowball, which has a way of aggravating sellers, or they're going to just not try at all. Selling a house has to start with getting people in the door to look at the house. And if it isn't priced well, you're already missing a massive demographic in terms of buyers who would be interested. What they will do is they'll say, oh, that's way too much. We can't afford that. They probably wouldn't even accept our offer. And then they move on. Or they lowball you outrageously and you hate the offer. So this is especially important, this pricing in a high interest rate market, because people are really clinging to every single dollar that they can. I mentioned that I had some personal experience of this, and it's actually from 2022. So back in 2022, I had some friends reach out to me about listing their house. And I think it was about July or August when I spoke to them. And we met and I went to their house and made some suggestions and recommendations. And we chose a list date and we looked at pricing. And the list date that we chose was maybe a month or so out. Well, we had some delays with things that we needed in order to list the house for sale. So the main one was the photographer was not able to get into the house because the lock on the door was not working. And the sellers were out of town and I had no way of fixing it. And so we ended up listing slightly later than we had anticipated. And regretfully, I did not revisit the market conditions and the economic atmosphere. Because if I had, I would have said to my clients something like, hey, there's been a downturn in the market since we first talked about the list price. It's still a seller's market, but interest rates have jumped pretty radically. And so the number of buyers who can afford your house at the price that we were planning has massively dropped. And, you know, we're seeing how houses close at a lower than list price. So we need to change our list price to make sure we can still get more buyers in the door and protect your bottom line. That's what I would have said if I had revisited kind of the economic conditions and everything else that was happening in the market. I learned a hard lesson. Thankfully, my sellers still sold their house and still sold it for a profit, but we had to do a pretty significant price drop to get there. And it's not because they were greedy and the initial price was inflated. It's because the market dictates the price. And at the time when we met, the market was different to how it was when we listed. So pricing really matters. All right, next up is condition and layout. So let's start with layout. Unless a buyer has deep pockets, layout is just not something they can afford to fix. So they don't want your weird sticky layout where you have to walk through a bedroom to get to another bedroom, and they don't want the random thoroughfare that doesn't make sense and doesn't have a real use. Some houses have really awkward rooms between rooms. It's more common in older houses or houses that were added onto in funky ways. But those rooms, those uncomfortable, weird, useless through rooms, those are frustrating for a buyer. Additional layout challenges include the room that has all windows and doors where you can't put any furniture against the walls, the tiny kitchen, angled and curved rooms, and rooms with random steps up and down. Really inconvenient. Now, just because the room is awkward or challenging doesn't mean that it's an impossible sell. It could just be a reason why it's not flying off the proverbial house shelf. The key, in my experience, is with staging. Staging is incredible because staging helps people see how a room or a house can be used and where they can put furniture. It helps them see the potential in the room and see how it can be used to suit them and their lifestyle. That's a huge win. If I walk into an empty, awkward-shaped room, I'm immediately focused on the awkwardness of the room and wondering how I can make that room fit the purposes that I would need it to fit. If I walk into an awkward-shaped room and the furniture is already in there telling me how I can use that space, that's incredibly helpful to me because now I understand. I can immediately see myself living in that room and how I'll make it work. So aside from layout, condition is harder to enhance without just enhancing it. If a house is in poor condition, the only way to really fix that is to not have it be in poor condition. It is pretty much immediately obvious to me when I'm showing a house to a buyer if that house has been well taken care of or not. From the moment I see the outside of the house, if the landscaping is overgrown, if there's a cracked window or a shutter is hanging loose, these are all indicators to me of whether a house is going to be in good shape or not, because these show me if there is any deferred maintenance on a home. So if you want to sell your house for top dollar or top pound, then you have to make a list of those items that need to be addressed and take care of them, point blank. There are lots of homeowners who don't know how to do certain things to take care of their home, like landscaping, for example. This is definitely me, by the way. But if you know that you're getting ready to sell your house, then set aside a couple $100, and pay someone to tidy it up on a super basic level to help with the condition and perceived condition of your home. And what I mean by condition versus perceived condition is perceived condition is the way the house looks. The condition is the actual state of the house. But something that you can do to help with the condition and the perceived condition of your home is to take care of landscaping, have your house pressure washed, get someone to do a deep clean, one of those cleans where they move the heavy furniture and they clean under the fridge. Have somebody, do a clean, replace missing bulbs, fix a broken window pane, and then paint. Some scuffs are normal because we all live in our houses. And goodness gracious, if you live with children, there will be scuffs. But there will be some scuffs. A whole house full of them just looks like you didn't care about the house. A magic eraser and a paint pen go a long way. Highly recommend using those. Now, something I recommend to sellers who are selling at higher price points is to do a pre-inspection. If you've taken pretty good care of your home, a pre-inspection is going to be a huge win because typically at best, there will be minor items. And so then if you have the available funds, you can take care of all of those items. I've had clients fix 1 or 2 joists under their house that were cut wrongly or in disrepair. It's usually minor things if the house is well taken care of, but then you can take care of those before you list the house for sale, and bonus points if you keep receipts for that work so that you can prove that the work was done by a professional. Something that is a red flag for me, except for very specific circumstances, is when I see a property disclosure from a seller and they have marked everything, no representation. So in North Carolina, there is a disclosure there's a disclosure that homeowners need to provide to buyers when they sell their house. And it's a form, and there are a number of questions. It's quite a few, about 4 pages worth of questions. And the questions are really about the condition and the age of the items and parts of the home. So questions about the roof and the HVAC and things like that. And for each of the questions, sellers have 3 options for an answer. They can choose yes, no, or no representation. So, for example, one question might be, are there any known issues in the property's foundation? And they can check yes, no, or no representation. Now, if on the entire form they have marked no representation, to me, that's a big red flag, because it's showing me that they haven't taken care of the home, or that they haven't investigated its condition if it's not one that they've lived in. I understand in real estate terms, a lot of agents are hesitant to advise their sellers to mark confidently no. And I say to people, if you are certain that there are no issues, click no. If there is any doubt, click no representation. But really, it's nice for a buyer to see what the condition of the home is. They are far more open to purchasing your home at above or at the asking price or above the asking price, if they can at least have some idea about the age and condition of things like the roof and the HVAC. All right, one more, you guys. Location. I actually asked my co-workers at the office about this, because I told them I was recording this podcast, and all of them essentially agreed that something that will, without any doubt, sink a listing is the neighbors. And this is where an HOA, so a homeowners association, can actually be great, because an HOA is going to prevent certain types of actions which can lead to depreciation of your home and the homes around it. So what are your neighbors like? Or what is your neighborhood like? Are the homes around your home well taken care of? Is there trash everywhere, for example? These are the kinds of things that you cannot change. You have no control over your neighbors. So when you're buying your house, choose your house in consideration of the neighbors. Look around. See what everyone else is doing. Another aspect of location is planned development and zoning changes. So I can think of at least 2 roads in our area off the top of my head that are set to be widened. And when this happens, here in North Carolina at least, I don't know about everywhere else, homeowners are paid to move. So they'll get paid to find another house so that the state can bulldoze their house and put something else there. But even with that payment, they're very likely not getting the top dollar for their house. And so if they attempt to list the house for sale prior to the road widening, for example, interest tends to be lower because of the future impact to that area and that house. So this is why sometimes being in a neighborhood can be helpful, because for example, the road that you live on in a neighborhood is a lot less likely to be widened down the road, although that doesn't mean it's impossible. So don't assume that just because you're in a neighborhood, you're safe. Additionally, if the location of your home is next to an industrial area or an agricultural area and has a certain smell or a type of noise, anything of that nature, that can be really off-putting to a buyer as well. So think about what's around you, where you live. Something else somebody else from the office mentioned was if it's close to railroad tracks, that can be really jarring for people, or if it's close to a fire station. So personally, I like being close to fire stations. But these are all things that buyers are going to be concerned about and thinking about. Don't be afraid of selling your home. Get with a good agent. Get your home to be the most presentable and most appealing it can be. And go ahead and put it on the market. See what happens. At some point, somebody's going to need your house. And in our current market, at least, inventory is so low that really, as a buyer, your options are limited, and so you'll go for whatever the best option is, even if it's not the dream option. All right, guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope that it was insightful and eye-opening. If you are looking for help with real estate, or you have some real estate questions, schedule a call. The link's in the show notes if you want to do that. If you are a first-time home buyer, and this has been eye-opening and you're looking for more, we have a free first-time home buyer guide that's also linked to in the show notes, and you can download that and take a look at it. And I'd really recommend just going back and listening to some of our past episodes, specifically on real estate, if that's something that you're interested in. Obviously, we go back and forth between design and real estate, but the real estate ones in particular can be really helpful if you are someone who is hoping to buy, just bought, hoping to sell, just sold. So take a look at all of those. I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.